This is Kristen.
And I'm Steve, and you're listening to Cycling Together, a show all about bikes, riding, and riding together.
We had a very busy weekend, and I feel like it's taken 3 days for my body battery to catch up.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. Well, we said when we hit May, things really get rolling, and we're busy every weekend, and here it is.
Yes. So Saturday, let's start. Saturday, you closed. I forced you to close so that you could come with me to Everwild, the International Women's Mountain Bike Day celebration at Hale Education.
Yeah, and it was a great. I mean, it was a great day, and it was May. It was May. Yeah, right. We're just.
It was May 3rd.
May 3rd. Okay, so just into May, and it was hot.
Surprisingly, shockingly, because it was supposed to be, 3 days before, you were like, I can't believe we can't go to this thing and bring a bunch of stuff because it's going to pour all day. And I was like, you have not been watching the weather, where Jackie has been sharing daily updates to the rest of us as she watched the weather.
And we ended up having nothing but sun and some humidity, which is probably the most humid we've had so far, right? A little bit of humidity, and then low 80s, and that ended up being just hot.
Yeah, it was a hot, gorgeous day. The funny part of that is, as an instructor at Everwild, I was given last year a long sleeve athletic shirt. And so I got the same thing this year. The fabric was better this year. I liked it better. But we all just kind of went, it's really hot for this shirt.
Well, that is unusual.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That's what Jackie said. She was like, last year, I think it was, maybe 60 or 70. It wasn't as hot. There were over 150 women there, including the instructors, of which I was one. We'll talk about that in a second. There were clinics, and there were rides, and there were vendors, of which you were a vendor. Last year you didn't come, and I'm going to tell you, it was really stinky to say to people, oh, yes, no, I own a bike shop. He's not here. It was much nicer this time to say, I own a bike shop. He's right there.
And you had a nicer base of operations. We had the van there. We had the tent out.
We slept over the night before in the parking lot, which was awesome. But I wanted to ask you what you thought of it.
I mean, it's a really, really nice event, and this is the second year, and I can see this continually growing. These events, as you say, events are hard, and they are always hard.
So hard.
And I think that Hale and Jackie did just an amazing job coordinating.
We should give Jocelyn some credit also. It's really Jackie and Jocelyn, but yes.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
just an amazing job pulling this all together.
The stoke was high.
It really was. Yeah.
It's interesting too. Somebody posted a story from a women's professional rider, a woman professional rider, mountain bike coach, about why we need women's events and women's rides. And she stated that women learn differently. We process information differently. We're physically different. How we do things. We tend to overthink things, and that we are also so often in the minority or the other. We're the only. We're the only woman on a ride, or one of very few in a ride. So there's such an amazing energy to a weekend or a day like Everwild.
Yeah, after your women's ride series, this type of event, it is all very clear when you see these women-focused events that they're important. They're just really important.
Yes, look at that. So I led the Essentials Clinic.
Yes, you did.
And I'm gonna fess up to to a slight case of what we'll call imposter syndrome, because I have taken clinics. I have assisted at clinics, but I have not led one. I've not led
not mountain biking, but you've done other clinics.
Right. I've led cyclocross race clinics.
Right.
And was probably as qualified. No, I was definitely less qualified to do those than I was. I'm a good explainer. I know that. Like, I know that I may not be able to physically do the thing, but I know what I should be doing. So I'm a pretty good explainer. But that doesn't mean going into this clinic that I was not, did not have a serious case of nerves. That was not helped by the fact that the assistant assigned to me, to whom I was partnered, was the executive director of the New England Mountain Bike Association. Great. She was lovely. She was amazing. Nicole was great and said to me afterwards that she was surprised that it was my first time leading a clinic.
Well, you're selling yourself short because you are really good at hurting people in a clinic situation.
Well, I'm good at organizing. Thank you.
But you're even very good teaching the skills. It doesn't matter that you aren't necessarily an expert at a certain skill when you know how to do these things.
Thank you. I think so. I did a lot of planning. I had 2 pages of notes and I watched a lot of videos. Most of them I did not like. Most of the videos I watched, which I will say were mostly men teaching something. And I thought, well, that's not how I would teach that. So, which just goes back to the fact that the women learn differently.
Yeah.
And they progress through things differently. And then what we do on Sunday?
Yeah, so Saturday was a long day. We were basically up at 6:30 and getting things going, and I don't know, home by 6:30. So
dog was so mad.
It was a 12-hour day or so, and then Sunday we went to see our first New England youth cycling race. So we have been doing the coaching every week. But we had not been to a race to see the kids yet, and so we got to go to a race and watch that scene.
Talk about nerves. Those kids had some nerves, man. There was one of the kids that I coach. At one point, I was talking to him, and I said, you're just going for a ride with numbers on. He said, that's not helping. And then all these other kids, they're all talking to each other. He said, I am having a straight-on panic attack. But the picture of him winging by, he clearly was having an amazing time. So this team is the first time you have really volunteered with a youth organization.
Yeah, it is.
On an extended period. Like you've helped once or twice with the Girl Scouts.
Sure, but not.
But this is the first time you've really committed to regular coaching. What do you think of that?
So it's I'm having a good time. It gets me out riding.
Yes.
And I mean, so far though, I've been usually placed with the fast kids. So we're doing a lot of just flat out riding fast.
Yes. I think they wanted you in part to keep up with the fast kids because they're breaking the grown-ups.
Just the way the days we have gone has not correlated many times with some of their skills days.
Yes.
So we've missed some of that, but
they gathered them all up on a rocky ridge.
They did
last
because
week.
2 days before that, you told them I would be giving a race pep talk or tip talk and so forth.
Not. What happened is I was talking to the one of the head coaches, and he was asking me what I thought of the coaching. They're very lucky. They have a huge number of adult volunteers on this team.
Yeah. Not all parents. That's the amazing thing.
No, not all parents. I mean, we're not parents of any of the kids.
Of any of these kids,
other grown-ups who are not parents of kids. All various levels of even riders amongst the parents. I don't know how many people have experience with racing. And so the coach and I were just talking about race fundamentals. And as you said, we only go once a week. So I too we've just ridden. And I said, when does that happen? Like when you do the fundamentals? And he was explaining all that. And I said, oh, Steve said he has a list that he's been making in his brain of things that he might want to tell the kids. That's what I said.
Yep.
I didn't say, And he'd like to present it to all of the children. What I actually said was, I'm going to tell him that when he's with the group, he should just take the opportunity to do a little coaching, that he doesn't have to just ride.
Right.
That then got translated into Steve's going to stand up here and reveal that he's been riding twice as long as all of them have been alive.
Right.
Because they're 11. And that you were going to share your tips. But you did a great job. You don't think of yourself as a good teacher.
Twice as much.
Right? Exactly. You don't think you're a good teacher. And I'm determined to show you that you actually
I had written down, and then I started, once you had told me that 2 days beforehand, I started actually writing some of this down in on my phone, so I had notes in front of me. But yeah, I tried to pick things that were in my head about racing that you don't see in sort of that common YouTube video of top 10 race tips.
Right.
It was sort of the little sneaky things that you don't necessarily think of.
Maybe we'll have to do a show. It'll be Steve's Sneaky 10.
Right. Sneaky 10.
But I thought you did a good job. And it was really fun to go watch them. As you said, we haven't gone to any of the races before. We've heard about them. And again, the stoke was high.
Yeah.
It was really
Now,
great.
this venue, which was beautiful, it was a state park, but it was spread out. So the teams all basically took up occupancy in a camp spot in the campground area, which meant that the teams and the tents, everybody was sort of spread out across the whole, in the woods through everywhere. Right. And there will be venues such as like Northfield where they have large open grassy areas where there's just basically it's going to be the town of tents.
So does that mean we're going to another one?
I would like to go to Northfield. We'll have to see where that falls in the schedule, but yeah. I would love to go to Northfield. It's not too far away. It's a beautiful area. You and I, you did your first mountain bike race there.
Oh, is that where the first mountain bike race was?
Yep.
Oh, then we have to go.
Yeah.
Because I did not know what I was doing.
So, right.
I will definitely get my coach's plate and I will ride. Mm-hmm. I find it super satisfying. I love working with the kids. I had missed. So for our listeners, I was a Girl Scout troop leader for our daughter from kindergarten to the 12th grade.
Yeah.
And I not just being a leader for our daughter, which of course I loved, but I really enjoyed the opportunity to work with the other girls, to coach them about being girls and about strong leaders. And I missed it. I missed those interactions with the kids. I missed the crazy conversations. And then I love watching them
it's
take
fun.
those nerves, embrace them, and do something amazing. So I'm really glad that you did it this year so that I could do it too. I am definitely not keeping up with the speedy kids. So.
Yeah, and they're very fast, and it's
and apparently they're not even as fast. Our speedy kids on our team are not even as fast as the speediest.
Oh,
kids.
No. In fact, there was one day where they were really moving through the woods.
Yeah.
And then I asked them basically, so, and this was early on. This was probably only maybe second or third coaching day we had done. And I said, "Oh, how do you guys do in the races? You must, are you getting podium?" And it was like, "No, like we're lucky if we crack the top 20." And then you hear about some of these kids who, well, I guess they've left the league, but because now they're racing for the national team in Europe and that kind of stuff, right? So you're getting some serious talent coming out of this series.
It's great. The hundreds of kids all in one place, all playing with bicycles, all supporting each other, helping them with their number plates. It's right. Just really
and
cool.
And just to reiterate,
watch.
We've said before, but basically New England youth cycling is the equivalent of NICA
right
around the rest of the country in different states.
The other fun thing about a day like Sunday is watching the parents let go a little bit. So talking to one mom. She's like, where is he? Is he where he's supposed to be? I said, the coaches have him. He's with the other kids. You just let's go watch. And that's not something that we as parents get to do all that often, right? Our kids just wander off into the woods with the coaches, and then they're riding through. It's very cool to be able to give them that independence. It's good for the parents. It's very cool. It's very cool. Waiting for it to start, though. One of the moms was like, "Wait, what is taking so long?" Her husband goes, "It doesn't start for 15 minutes." Oh, fine.
Yeah, and what the first thing when we got there, it was a good thing I was there because one of the racers had a dragging front brake. Oh, because he was on the trainer warming up, and apparently just kept on squeezing his front brake.
No.
With no front wheel.
Right.
To the point where he was lucky the pistons didn't pop out. So, and then they couldn't get that actually opened up enough to not drag. And I mean, he had 5 minutes before he had to be down.
So you were able to fix it?
Oh yeah, I was like, give me the bike.
That's it.
Right?
Give me the bike.
Take the wheel back out.
Fantastic.
I'm like, you guys are being too gentle with this. This is race time. This is race mode.
Right.
This is race mechanic time, right?
Yes.
You have to get him operational and not dragging his wheel badly on the start line in 5 minutes. I will do it in 30 seconds.
Right. I will not be gentle with this thing.
It doesn't matter if we gouge up the pads a little bit. We're getting these pistons
right.
out. Yeah, which were stuck.
Were they?
Yeah. So you had it. That's why it didn't go, because they were being a little too gentle.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you were there. Yeah. I totally missed that. All right. Well, what are we talking about today?
Oh, cleaning the bike.
Yeah, we're going to do a deep dive. We've talked about cleaning the bike a couple of times and why you should clean your bike, you filthy animals. So we're not talking about what you as the bike guy do to clean the bike at the shop. We're talking about what we as bike owners can do to clean our bikes and what equipment is needed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so we'll do a deeper dive. So it was good timing on this. Friday morning, I rode gravel, and my bike was just a
disgusting.
Yeah, it had rained the night before,
and
it was coated in mud. And then what? Saturday we got a little messy, didn't we? So
your bike. So I washed your mountain bike. It clearly had not been cleaned.
Oh, and it was overdue
in a hot minute.
It was overdue, although it wasn't that bad. It was the mud puddles on Saturday that were left over Saturday morning. It
was pretty bad.
That's what covered it.
Your down tube was.
Oh yeah, see, it wasn't like that until Saturday.
When we talk about cleaning our bikes, why do we care about cleaning our bikes other than the fact that it makes them look pretty? Makes them look pretty.
I mean, first and foremost is probably wear and tear.
Mm-hmm.
A chain will wear down much, much faster when it's dirty.
Yep.
And because chain stretch, and we will say this over and over many times.
I feel
in
like we've talked about it, and we'll keep talking about it.
Chain stretch is really the pins wearing down the holes that they're in those holes where the pins go into becoming larger.
Right.
And so those are wearing down by the grit in the dirt and the chain lube all mixing together to cause a friction paste and then wearing those out. So your chain, the cleaner your chain is, the longer it will last. And if you're not one who picks up on that your chain is worn, then you also can ruin your cassette and then your pulleys and your chain ring and so forth. So right away, wear and tear there. On a mountain bike where you have suspension, so that grit will get onto your stanchions and so forth. It'll get down into the seals. It will. So your shocks and your forks will need service more often because of that. They'll scar the dirt will scar the surface what they're supposed to slide on that you're supposed to keep nice and clean. Dropper post, same thing. You can get those all gunked up. Cleaning your bike, minimize the wear and tear.
Yeah. And even on road and gravel bikes, anything with tape around the handlebars, you could have sweat, you have just sticky stuff that you've been drinking, if you've been doing like there's all sorts of gook you should be getting off of your bike on a regular basis. We talked about in the past for the mechanic, it makes diagnosing problems a lot easier if you are not first trying to dig. It's not an archaeological dig to try to figure out what's going on.
And one of the best tools that mechanics use is sound. And if the bike is gritty, then sound is a problem. Sound is a problem to use.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything to fear when cleaning your bike? Like one of the big things I'll hear is you're gonna mess up your brake pads.
It's actually, and I get this often, is that some people in a way think you can't just like hose your bike down. You can't get your bike wet.
Yes.
Is it really designed to get that wet type of situation? And
I swear it's the media. I swear it's like YouTube videos that are like, if you get anything on your rotor, and then it's gonna get the pads gross, and so you really can't get anything. Like I just watched a video because we were prepping for this, and the first thing the woman did before she had even wet down her bike is she wrapped the rear rotor in like a plastic bag. And I thought, well, I am doing that wrong. Like I flood the zone with water.
Yes.
Like I don't.
Water is not going to hurt your bike.
But I swear
they need to be washed almost like you wash your car.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
I feel better already because I swear I have everything I read is, but just you don't want to mess up those. Don't mess up those brakes.
We're going to talk about that.
There seem to be ways to do it, but it can
get wet.
Hella wet.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Super wet.
Yeah.
Other things that I worry about, you mentioned the stanchions.
The stanchions.
Mm-hmm. I can wash those. Like I found myself overthinking that the other day as I started to. I had a soft cloth.
Yes,
and I had little
but you
want to
use a soft cloth. So
okay.
you don't want to say be taking a rag or a cloth or whatnot and be wiping down a bike that's dirty, and then when there's dirt and grit on that rag, then you wipe those. You don't want to do that because you don't want to wipe those down because then you're creating sort of micro abrasions in that. So,
but
that
you
is
can
best.
Again, you can wash them.
But you absolutely wash them.
All right, let's talk about the equipment. Do you recommend people have a mechanic stand?
Well, I do for many reasons. One is washing the bike. So the purpose that you wouldn't think it's for is great. It is great for that. And then if you're somebody who does even some minor stuff on your bike, having a work stand where you have the bike lifted up in the air at eye level where you can turn the cranks and you can spin the wheels and you can turn the handlebars and all that stuff, it's one of those things. If you buy a mechanic stand, you're going to have it. You could theoretically have it for the rest of your life, to be honest.
If you take care of it.
You really could. If you took care of it, you can. Yes, there is no reason you can't.
It is one of the coolest things I think we own. We have one at home.
We do, which, by the way, it is my oldest one. And we don't necessarily take care of it now, and that's unfortunate. We probably should. So
we need to rehab her.
Yeah, it just needs a few replacement hardware pieces.
Really great to be able to put it on the stand. You can get around it. It's not leaning up against the house. It's not in the grass. It's not required. But of all the specialty pieces of equipment that we have to clean the bike, I think that's my favorite. Other than that, I don't think there's anything that I use that is technically a specialty piece of cleaning equipment.
Right. But just on that, the work stand, you'll often, maybe you've been to a like a Airbnb or something where we've been to where they have a bike wash stand. And that's basically
That's true.
just a place where you can hang the bike up a little higher off the ground.
Yep.
And so, yeah, there are things called bike wash stands, and it's just a way of getting the bike up higher
They
and
can
off
be
the
made
ground.
with like 2x4s. We've seen them made
absolutely.
with 2.
Yep.
We've talked about
You
putting
can
one
even
in our
just have
backyard.
a simple like arm, even quite frankly, a horizontal tree branch, and you
Right.
just hang the nose of the saddle by that, and you're good to
it doesn't
go.
have to be anything special.
Yeah,
It's
it just
that you wanna
makes
be able to-
everything easier to wash.
easier to
Right. No.
We use
Now
a hose.
Yep. And what? Sponges. I have a handled soft bristle brush.
Yeah, that one happens to be a muck off brush, but it doesn't have to be.
No,
it's just
it
a
could be
soft
anything.
brush.
Yep.
A lot
I
of
do have a couple of
rags.
stiff brushes, bristle brushes that
Yep.
are used for cassettes and so forth.
Yep. A ton of rags. Because
of
as you
rags.
said, the minute it gets gritty, I move on to the next
Yep.
rag, right? Because you don't want to be dragging it across
Right.
your paint.
Right.
I don't want it to scratch
Yep.
my pretty paint. Why don't we wash our bikes in the shower?
Well, okay. So have we done that before? I think we have, haven't we?
I have done it before,
Yeah.
and you told me in no uncertain terms that I should never do it again.
Right.
Do you remember why you said we should never do it again?
So cleaning the shower is not recommended, but in a pinch you can. But let's just talk about why I don't particularly like you washing in our shower or in our house washing the shower.
Yes.
And this does not fall to everywhere, but we're on a septic system.
Right.
And so when you wash a bike, oily, greasy things and stuff is coming off the bike. And I don't want that going into the ground.
Right. It has nothing
which
to
is
do
where
with the
it's going.
bike. The bike would love to be in my shower. It's
Right.
warm and
Yes.
lovely. But it's really more that even just all that greasy stuff gets
And
into our shower
That is
on the
so that's the
tiles
secondary
and-
reason for any shower is
Yeah.
that you could wash your bike in the shower. You think this is all not bad. Everything's getting clean. You take your bike out of the shower and so forth. And you come into the shower, say the next day or whatever, and it's gross. You're like, what?
Right.
Wait, why
Like
is
a
it
teenager took a
gross
shower
in
in
here?
here.
And it's because all of that residue does not clean up easy. It does not
Right.
go down the drain easy. It can get
So
be gross.
we don't get to use the shower. We do use, I will say, one on the list of equipment, bucket and warm soapy water.
warm hot
really
water
nice.
is actually nicer to use.
Yeah, so
It works better.
yes. Other pieces of equipment would be, we in the past have used Simple Green, right? We've
Yep.
used the
The muck off bike
stuff.
wash, the pink stuff.
pink
Yep.
stuff, which is great because you can refill those bottles with the punk powder refill.
Yes, or you can get your bottle refilled at a bulk station at some shops as well
Oh.
too, with just with the liquid.
Okay.
And just plain old dishwashing soap works great.
Right. So
Yeah.
you don't
or car
necessarily-
wash. There are car wash concentrates as well.
Okay. Other piece of equipment that I have a question about, which is the disc cover that I see being sold. Is that a real thing that I need to buy?
No, you don't need to buy. But I'm not going to say I don't recommend it because it is super easy to contaminate your disc pads or your disc rotors.
Okay.
It's easy to contaminate your disc pads. It is not easy to contaminate your disc rotors, I should say, during a wash. All right, but during lubrication is when you can do that, and it's certainly easier to wash your rotors if you accidentally say, "Oop, I think a couple droplets got onto my rotors." You can easily just wash that while you're washing your bike.
Yes.
Unfortunately, pads, you don't know if you got stuff on them because of they're set into the in the brake pads.
Yep.
And once you get oily residue on them, it basically almost seems impossible to get it off.
Okay.
And different brands of pads seem to be a little bit more sensitive to this kind of thing.
And you would know if you had messed up your pads.
They tend
because
to
they start
squeal.
Okay.
Yeah, that's if you're
They say, "Help me! I've been violated."
if your disc brakes are squealing all the time, then you've got something on them.
Okay.
And if they are, and certainly if they're low on power. But sometimes the power is there, that at least you think it's there.
Yeah.
But they're making the noise. Yeah.
Okay. That's a good sign. All right. So let's talk about cleaning the bikes phase. I'll call it a tier 1 cleaning.
Oh, you've tiered these cleanings.
I've tiered these
okay.
cleanings.
Let's do a tier 1 cleaning.
Here's the thing. When I look at the difference between tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 of a Brandt household cleaning for the bikes, I started to realize it all started to get centered on one area of the bike, depending on how aggressive the cleaning was. And it was all down to the drivetrain.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, as we go through it, you can tell me if that sounds accurate.
I don't know, but yeah, I guess that sounds accurate in terms
Right.
of the level. The level of detail you go through. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Tier 1 is,
Yeah.
we'll call it your every couple week cleaning, right? It's or after a particularly muddy ride.
Yes.
Right. You're gonna flood the zone with water.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna give it that soapy wash.
Yep.
Really, and let that water soak in. That's the big thing with the pink. The pink stuff. It'll say pre-wash,
pre-wet.
pre-wet.
Yep. Spray
it down. Walk away.
Yes.
5 minutes.
Yes.
Let it do its thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it does. It
really
breaks
does.
down the hard bits underneath. I don't try to knock those off ahead of time.
Right.
Big soapy wash.
So this is the fundamental of washing your bike. Between water and a surfactant, which is soap.
A surfactant.
So if you just like rinse down your bike, that is okay as a intermediate step to sometimes in an event they'll have a hose, and but maybe that's it. There's just a hose, and it was a muddy day, and so you spray down all of the mud off your bike so that it can make it home, so you can actually wash it.
Yes.
Okay. If you just use water on a muddy bike, it does not clean off all of that mud, and certainly not any oils or grime or anything like that. And then it basically just leaves a haze as it dries of filth.
Okay, can we talk about the people who, there's a long line of people waiting because you've all just done a really gross ride. You're all at the bike wash.
This sounds like a cyclocross race,
which is off.
Yep.
And there's one guy who's like, no, I'm doing a deep cleaning right now. And they will be there for half an hour while everybody's just waiting.
Yeah.
That is not the time to clean your bike. That is the time. Get it just rinsed off so you can get it home, and then get out of the way, because everybody else is standing there muddy and miserable trying to get their bike cleaned so that they can go home.
Yep.
Right. But there's always one.
But at those events, if they have soap, absolutely use the soap. Right? I mean, you do want to.
Just said not to.
No, you said don't monopolize the wash station, but I would say, sort of in that vein of being considerate, get as clean as you can.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that. If there's not a long line, there's soap available.
Right.
Soap her up.
Yes.
Give her some love.
Yeah.
Try to get some of that. The oils and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But
the soap is needed to get the dirt off.
Yes. Okay. All right. So we're home. As I said, we're going to get it super wet.
Yep.
We're going to add our surfactant. What did you call it?
Surfactant.
Okay. We're going to call
it. makes water wetter. That's basically what it's doing.
Water is not wet. Water makes things wet. Right. Just for the record. That's what I learned from some Twitter account. You really want to after you get that soapy, really get into all the bits and the pieces with that soapy. I will, as I said, I'll use multiple either sponges or rags to just not so much rub. Like, it's funny, I will more continue to flood the zone with soapy water, where I'm taking it and I'm gently washing it, but I'm not aggressively rubbing.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
It's really more of a gentle, we're still flooding. We're still it's a ton of liquid, just with soap this time. I'm not applying soap directly to the bike or to my rag. It's in the water itself.
Yep.
and then continuing to kind of rinse and see that I've gotten everything. Getting in particular under the saddle.
It is amazing how you've hosed down your bike and you've done all this stuff, and then you'd be like, how did I miss that spot? How did I miss that spot?
This big.
So you're absolutely right. So like underneath the down tube, behind the seat tube near the rear wheel, and that and that fork and that nook and cranny in there, underneath the saddle. Trying to think of behind the fork, at the top of the fork crown. That's that little junction there. It gets frequently missed.
Yep.
Yeah, lots of little. And then it's just basically after you've done that, you're rinsing all this off, and we're gonna get into the power of the rinse in a second here. But and if the drivetrain was not that dirty and that filthy, then a lot of times just everything you're doing for the rest of the bike, the soapy water and the light touching of your sponge or your brush gets all that clean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you want to dry it. So I do like to wash the bike when it's sunny out, if possible. So I will dry most of the bike, and you kind of bounce it up and down on the ground, and all those big droplets come bouncing out, and then I like, if you can, stick it in the sun to air dry like that.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that becomes more difficult if you're in the nasty seasons where there's no sun and there's no warmth and so forth.
Yep. Tell me about the chain. Even at this level of cleaning, we've soaped the rear cassette, we've soaped the chain.
Yeah.
You've rinsed it. I tend to run it through a rag in my hand, the chain.
To dry it?
To dry
yes,
it.
Absolutely.
It takes off a little bit of dirt. Like, I'm not aggressively trying to clean it, but I'm drying it, and in that drying process.
Well, the chain can always be its own thing. No matter how the rest of the bike looked, the chain might just need more attention.
Yeah.
And of all the things in terms of what we just talked about, don't be afraid of water in your bike.
Yeah.
The chain is the one place to be afraid.
Okay.
And not that it can't get wet, is that it just can't sit wet.
Yes.
And so that's the biggest thing. So especially if you have to wash your bike in the winter, or you don't have the opportunity to let it, it's not going to air dry very well, right? Then you want to physically dry that with a towel. And any time the chain gets washed or wet, you want to lube it. Okay. So there is going to be that lubrication after the wash for the chain.
Now, can I ask about lube?
No, let's go through the rest of the cleanings, because the lube will always be the last thing on most of these washes.
Oh, you're going to make me go through all of them before I talk about chain lube?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So tier 2. So this is where I was thinking the only escalation for me between tier 1 and tier 2 is all, again, into the drivetrain.
In the drivetrain.
That when we talk about what I am now defining as tier 2, normally wouldn't have said it, but if I look at the bike and I go, oh, she really needs some love, the next thing I will probably do is all the stuff we just talked about.
Yep.
But then I take the rear wheel off. And the reason I do that is it allows me to really work on cleaning that cassette.
Yeah, absolutely.
And here's a question. I saw a couple of, again, we don't use anything different for cleaning the cassette. I still use the pink stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I may use a hard brush that you have and really I'll spray the cassette. I'll let it soak. I'll start going after it with a stiff brush. Mm-hmm. We have some skinny brushes and some picks so I can really, oh yeah, look, there's a stick in there and a small animal and I'll stick them out. Sometimes I will what's called floss the cassette, which is so satisfying.
It is. The edge, you take the edge of a rag.
Yes.
So, and then you put that thin as you're holding that rag taut.
Yep.
You put that edge into between the cogs.
Yep.
And then you just basically go back and forth. And as you go left and right, the cassette naturally ratchets and turns and goes around, so you're getting all around just by moving left and right.
Yeah.
And then you go in between the next one and the next one and the next one.
Very satisfying.
Yeah, it's great.
I actually saw a video the other day, and it was like somebody had, instead of a whole towel, sometimes it's a little too much fabric. It was like just a thin strip of fabric, and almost like
yeah, that's
that
where
way
you
you didn't
can.
have-
I used to do this. I used to cut thin strips out of rags and particular things, and then use that.
I love that
Yeah.
idea, because sometimes you can't see the cassette because it's covered by all your fabric.
Yep.
And sometimes it gets trapped. So I actually
Too
love the
thick
idea.
of a rag, too thick of fabric, it doesn't work all that way great.
Right.
Actually, you can't maneuver
Okay.
it through very easily. But yeah.
Yeah. What about, I've saw a couple of, I'll call them pretty aggressive foamy degreaser things that people were putting
Oh,
on
I think
their
you're talking
cassettes.
about those sort of jet degreaser sprays.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So there
like
are some products out there. There are spray degreasers.
Yep.
I believe Finish Line makes one, and they're sort of, and it's an aerosol can, a metal
Yeah.
aerosol can, and
Yep.
they have a very, very forceful spray.
Okay.
And so they almost jet clean the cassette and the chain with this really it's just a solvent that works amazingly well.
Okay.
I have reservations about these. They do work really well.
Okay.
But
They sound stinky. Are
so
they stinky? Like
oh yeah, they are. No, they
fume-wise?
are. They're stinky with fumes. Yeah, I mean, these are not like biodegradable.
Have your kid help you clean your
sunshine
bicycle.
Yeah,
No.
This is some serious degreasing chemicals.
Okay.
And so when you're doing this, one, you are inhaling those fumes.
Fantastic.
They work because they're also flooding the zone with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so that is just dripping down all over the ground. So you are just dropping the grease from your cassette plus these degreasing chemicals onto
Okay.
the ground. And then, of course, if it's on your wheel, even if your wheel is off your bike,
Okay.
your rotor is still on your wheel.
Whoops.
So you could be you're over splashing
Okay.
this mix of degreaser and oils from your cassette onto your rotor.
We did see
And
one.
that's where a rotor guard can come into play.
We did see one video where they sprayed it with this stuff. It was on the bike. They sprayed the cassette, and then they started to hit it with a brush. And you said, oh, well, now they definitely have gotten everything messed up from, they've definitely contaminated their brakes because they were so aggressive with this chemical stuff.
Right.
Okay, so I also have the bike off. I have the wheel off, and I've been cleaning the cassette. And while I have the wheel off, the other thing I like to do is I have this tool from Park Tool called a Big Dummy. And the Big Dummy effectively...
It's a chain keeper.
It's a chain keeper. That's the real term for it? Okay, chain keeper. But effectively, it lets the chain run through the derailleur.
Yep.
While the wheel is off.
While the wheel's off.
And that lets me go to town on that derailleur, right? I can check the pulleys. That's what they're called.
Yep.
The little pulleys. And those get full of
Or jockey wheels. Pulleys or jockey wheels.
Okay. And I'm cleaning those of what?
So, I'm glad you mentioned the pulleys because that is probably one of the biggest things I see of bikes that come into the shops in terms of what people are not taking care of their bike on the cleaning side.
Yes.
Okay. So one would be the chain and two would be the pulleys because the pulleys
Those are those two little, it's the two little cogs.
In your derailleur.
In your derailleur.
Yes, the chain runs through. So those collect dirt, and on the sides,
Hair.
on both sides, that the dirt builds up.
Yes.
I mean, and it can build up so thick that it's basically filled in the gap between the pulley itself and the metal cage next to it. So all of this is creating friction for your chain running through, smoothness of shifting, all that kind of stuff. So, and this is where you take a flat-headed screwdriver works really well, and you kind of just hold it up against the edge of that, and you can either turn the crank to get the chain running through to then therefore turn the pulleys, or you can actually just put your finger on the pulley and turn it by hand. But you were scraping off all of that dirt, and then once you've scraped off the mass of the dirt, then you can kind of come in and sort of pinch it with your fingers in a rag and just sort of get that rest off.
Old toothbrushes are great little
or old toothbrushes.
Tool.
Mm-hmm.
I have at least a couple in my
sometimes this dirt is so packed on those pulleys that the brushes don't do too much unless they're very, very stiff bristles.
There's a whole sub-genre of videos on YouTube of people cleaning pulleys with screwdrivers.
Yeah.
There's just a whole, because it's just a ribbon of grossness.
And then a ribbon of gross comes off.
Just a ribbon of gross, and there's hair in there. And there's
hair. Let's talk about that.
Okay, let's talk about hair.
So if you have long hair.
Yes. So not just women, but if you have long hair.
Right. So you tend to lose strands of that, right? Throughout the day and on a ride.
The long hair around here is trying to kill our Roomba. So yes, I'm aware of that process.
And so I often find on women's bikes in the shop who have long hair that there is hair trapped in the pulleys.
Okay.
And you actually have to undo the pulley screw, take the pulley out of the derailleur, get the hair out.
Right.
And you'll find like this coil of hair along the edge where it has wrapped itself around the axle of that pulley.
Based on the hair that gets wound around our Roombas, brushes, I've often joked it's the slowest, ineffective way to murder somebody. But you absolutely, it cuts through rubber.
Yeah.
Like it cuts through on the Roomba. One of them is a plastic rubber kind of brush, and it has sliced through just our daughter's hair, has sliced straight through the plastic. Oh. So no hairs.
And you wouldn't think on a bike, while you're riding that the hair,
on your head
hair would just, because you're only losing, a strand here, a strand there, but you would think it would not go down onto your derailleur. And boy, does it.
And you would say it's not just picking up hair from anywhere, because men's bikes would have the same issue, but it's women's bikes where you observe more hair. While I'm talking about cleaning the chain and I've got my big dummy on, those chain cleaner tools, the ones that clamp on, what do you think of them?
They do work very well.
Okay.
They can be convenient to use. You can get just as good of a job done, but without them.
Okay.
But they kind of make it convenient, especially, they make it convenient.
So you don't have to take the chain off.
Sort of you don't have to take the chain off. So here's the thing about taking the chain off. So most chains nowadays have a quick link.
Yes.
Okay. And you do need a tool to undo that quick link. But the thing is that 90% of the chains, we're going to say, I'm not going to say 100% because there's a couple out there. They want you to use a brand new quick link when you put it back together.
Oh.
Now, everybody does not.
No.
They will reuse their quick link. Everybody does it. I know they do it, and they have been fine, but they are not as strong. And at the same time, there are people who have broken the quick link because they tried to reuse it too many times.
Well, there's also the other risk when you take the chain off is that you best know how to thread it back through those pulleys to make sure it does go in the right direction.
And you have to know that many chains are directional.
Exactly.
They have a left and a right side.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of, you do have to know what you're doing.
So a tool like that, the clamp on, are really helpful to keeping the chain clean. There does seem to be a trend now that we ran into, which is people making their own chain cleaner tools out of a water bottle,
top of a Coke bottle, and
top of a Coke bottle, and a toothbrush head.
Yes, yeah.
You know, I'm all for it.
Sure.
Necessity is the mother
Right.
of invention.
Yeah.
That seems to work. But the idea is that you're giving it that next level of clean.
Yes, but remember when you are cleaning a chain with degreasers and solvents, you are stripping out the lubricant from inside the rollers where it's needed.
Right.
Right? So, and then if you were to apply a lubrication on the chain while there's still degreasing residue in there, the degreasing residue is going to break down your new lubricant and not provide the job that it's supposed to do.
But when we clean chains here at home, we're still just using the simple green and the pink stuff. Like, we're not using any aggressive degreaser.
No, because we tend not to let our chains get too nasty.
Okay.
Right? So
Yes.
so that is sufficient in terms of not having to really get off a lot of built-on
We're
gunk.
trying to get them back to shiny. We're trying to see their color. By the way, when someone has a black chain on his mountain bike, very hard to tell if it's clean.
True.
I was cleaning your bike and I was like,
that's when you need to
"This
see if there's
chain-
something coming off on a
This
rag.
chain is disgusting. And I started to clean it and I was like, oh, right. This chain is black. It's not very satisfying. It's not as satisfying as, look, it was kind of black and now it's silver again. Something very satisfying. It doesn't, it's really elbow grease, right? It's just taking your rag and following along and just
Yep,
cleaning it.
along with your cleaners.
Yeah.
And then it's important to let that dry.
Yes.
A final rubbing alcohol wash or wipe can be great for a chain because it's going to actually dissolve down and clean off the cleaners that you might have used.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. And then evaporate very quickly. So that is a great way as a final wash on a chain.
Right.
But then it is great to just let the chain sit and really dry
Yes.
before you apply the lubrication.
Okay. Like we talked about in the sun, but if it can't be out in the sun, is it okay to say
Put
it
a fan on it.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
put a fan on it if I couldn't. Yeah, it like
Okay.
yeah.
Even when we get to tier 3, the biggest change for me would be, okay, this cassette is really, really bad.
Yep.
I'm going to take it off the wheel.
Yep.
And it falls apart depending on how many rings it has, right?
Right.
And then we soak it.
Yep.
But I'm still soaking it. I have to say, I'm still soaking it in something friendly. I have never cleaned our bikes with anything that required me to wear an N91 mask.
That's the aerosols, but you're right. I mean,
I only
Dawn
use-
detergent will soaking in that will do an amazing job.
Yeah, you put it in a thing.
Yep. I mean, it's and then you're going to need a little some manual.
Well, that's the thing. Then
work
you
to
take
get-
each one out and you clean it, and then there's usually one. That's several of the. On
So
one.
and then for the derailleurs. So the derailleurs, I find that you can actually get quite clean on the bike. You don't necessarily
Yes.
need to take them off. It does help on the rear derailleur and to shift it in. So wheel off.
Yep.
A little easier with the wheel off.
Oh, it's way easier without the wheel on there.
And then you shift it in like it's going on one of the larger cogs.
Okay.
That opens up the parallelogram and opens and pulls the cage away from the body. And then you can take a rag and you basically are just sort of flossing it.
Yes.
So you can actually put the rag through the parallelogram in the middle, up through there, and floss that back and forth. You're giving this what I like to call a lot of my cleaning on the bikes almost like a shoe shine. Think about that whole motion of a shoe shine type of thing with a rag. And then I find that for me, I like, so this is where I do use spray.
Okay.
Okay.
Confession time.
Yes, and so I use a silicone spray. I really, really like the silicone, but when I use it, I'll use it in two different ways. I will use it, and it has a straw. I use a straw head on it.
Okay.
And I can almost dribble it out of that, so that I'm not shooting out as droplets, or I will shoot it into a rag.
Okay.
So that I have it on the rag and I have not basically sent aerosol particles up into the air. And so I love sort of dribbling on silicone into the pivot points of a derailleur onto the spring. And
is
that's
that to clean it, or
so
is
this
that
is two things.
after
I'm cleaning. This is after sort of a wash clean.
Okay.
But if it's not that dirty,
Yes.
right, then it becomes sort of the cleaner and the lubricant at the same time.
Okay.
And silicone does not really attract dirt, and it works great for these pivoting points of a derailleur. So it keeps everything just operating smoother. And then on the front derailleur, you would shift it to the big ring if you have a big ring.
Yes.
Well, if you have a front derailleur, you have a big ring.
Right.
And that, again, opens up the parallelogram. You can get the rag through there. You can go back and forth. You're sort of trying to get all the grit off.
Yep.
Another thing, if you have it, that works really well for the derailleurs to do before you put lubricant on it, though.
Okay.
All right, is air compressor and an air gun. So shooting that at parts on a bike works really well to get all the stuff out, and especially like things with nooks and crannies like derailleurs. But you don't want to like lube your derailleur full of silicone and then do this, because now you're going to send particulates of lubricant up into the
Yes.
Again, then
order matters.
Right.
And then
Order matters.
That's not great. As I said, with like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, it all seemed to center around the derailleur.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else I was cleaning, I've never taken apart other things to try to make it cleaner.
Yeah, the cranksets. So the more you just sort of keep up on the cleaning, the less cleaning you need to do.
It's what my mother keeps telling me, but it doesn't work around here.
No. But if you're, say, coming to your bike, you'd be like, I don't think I've ever cleaned this, right? That kind of situation.
You're going straight to tier 3.
Right. And there can be a lot of built up grime on a bike. And in places now that it's more difficult, like around the crankset, and say on the inside, if you have a single cranks or single chainring cranks are pretty easier to clean.
Yep.
Double ones are much more difficult. You almost need to take the crank off the bike to get at the backside of it.
Okay.
And to get in between the chain rings and the backside of the chain rings.
Again, if it's been a long time.
Yeah, and I will find that some bikes come in and my normal sort of on the stand cleaning, which I suppose we can call a sponge bath in a way.
Okay.
Right. It like doesn't do anything. And there are times I'm like, I'll try this degreasing cleaner and I'll wipe it with that, and then I'll try this all-purpose cleaner on top of that, and then I'll try some alcohol on top of that, and it's like, this is not coming clean. This is dirt that has been baking in the sun and the wind and everything for years. Yeah. And so I don't think I've ever had a bike like that, but it does not come off in the work stand at the shop. And magic erasers. So magic erasers can be wonderful for getting off that kind of years of built up grime.
Really?
Yeah. You are going to dull the finish of things.
Okay.
But a lot of times, in a minor way, but sometimes that's better than the dirt that was on it and the filth that was on it. We should talk about spraying the bike. So you might hear lots of things about, don't power wash your bike. Don't power wash your bike and so forth.
Muc-Off has a new power washer.
They do. These are low pressure power washers. These are not car wash power washer.
Got it.
Units.
These aren't like cleaning your brick power washers.
No, but generally, let's say you're just using your garden hose, right?
Yes.
You don't want to put it on the finest stream. You want to have somewhat of a spread of the droplets. Okay. Because you're not,
so no jet.
Yeah, and the only reason behind that is because you don't necessarily want to force water into bearings or force water into, or even certain openings in your frame where cables go.
Yes.
There's going to be maybe little gaps around those. And the harder you're spraying at that area, then the more water will get down in there. Okay. Now, most frames have
drain holes
at the bottom. Not all do.
Oh.
And I have certainly had my fair share of bikes that come into the shop where I have had to turn them upside down, take the seat post out, and water comes pouring out. I actually haven't seen that in a long time because I think
most have drain holes.
Most have drain holes now.
But
yeah,
so it's okay to get it very, very wet.
Yep.
You don't necessarily want to get it very, very wet at pressure.
Correct.
I do tend to use the more floody water setting on the right. It's not a spray, but it's
because
a
really,
gentle flood.
You're using, as we talked about, you're using the soap.
Yes.
And the brush or the sponge.
Yeah.
And sort of that process to get it clean. You're not trying to blast the dirt off.
If you clean your bike regularly, the cleaning is fairly gentle.
Yes, it is.
Right? You're not trying to, again, just like your car. Right?
And regular could be once a month during the riding season. It doesn't even have to necessarily. That is often enough to keep dirt from baking itself and solidifying on the bike.
Satisfying. I love washing the bikes. It's just a fun go outside and wash my bikes. There's all this stuff that you can spray on the bikes or on the bits and the bobs of the bikes, like luster spray.
I use this sometimes.
I just got some in a gift box.
So
or gift
actually,
bag.
Some of this is called silicone spray because silicone is one of the compounds that does well for making a bike shine. This is for your frame.
Okay, just for the frame. It's not for like my side tires.
You know, I find there are products for that, but I find it doesn't work that well on tires.
Okay.
And then there's
is it just to make my frame
new bike in a can? Is what one of the products is called.
Bike in a can. Are these just
bike
to
luster?
Are these just to make it shiny?
Just to make it shiny.
What if you have a matte mountain bike like you do?
I actually find that this stuff can work quite well on a matte bike, but it can it can be blotchy unless you wipe it even across the bike.
Yes.
There are matte finish cleaners out there. And I've used them, and I say, well, there's no difference than just from actually washing it with the other.
I was
detergents.
surprised that the one I got in my gift bag said for cleaning and.
It did. It said for cleaning and polishing.
Yes, and I thought, but my bike is dirty. Why would I put this on there? Is it a soap? We don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if I would trust that to clean and polish.
Okay. But I'm finished cleaning my bike. She's dry. She's beautiful. And I use this stuff to make her
shiny.
Okay. Shiny. Functionally, does it protect anything?
Well, actually, dirt, it is a coating.
Okay.
Right? So, and dirt does not stick to it as easily. So your bike will actually stay cleaner a little longer.
Okay. We have the luster lube.
Let's talk about the chain lube now.
Wet lube, dry lube, ceramic.
Okay, so
what the hell am I talking about?
Wet lube and dry lube, you'll see on different chain lubricants from all the brands.
Yes.
And they both refer to what the lube consistency or application is all about and for the conditions that you're usually use these in.
Okay.
So a wet lube, you can almost think about like an oil. Right? Basically different forms of oil.
Yes.
So it goes on like an oil, and because it's an oil, water and oil don't mix, so it will not wash off very easily in the rain. So if you're going to be riding in wet conditions, that's when you tend to use a wet lube. Okay. I'm sure there are plenty of people who like wet lubes all the time. That's fine. But that's the general application of a wet lube.
Okay.
A dry lube tends to be the lubricant itself. The lubricant that's intended to lube your chain is dissolved in a carrier solution. And so you apply this to your chain, the carrier solution dries and evaporates away, leaving behind that, it could be a wax type of base material or whatnot, but leaving behind the actual lubricant in your chain. And these tend to not collect dirt as easy. Wet lubes collect dirt much easier, which is why people don't really like using those in dry conditions. Because all that dust and so forth will cake on there. But they do wash, dry lubes do wash off if they get wet quite quickly. I mean, even just in the course of that wet ride.
Ceramic?
Well, ceramic is just another, it's a type of lube that some companies make that have different particles in them to either provide advanced lubrication or not wash away as easy or whatnot. I do like I do like some ceramic lubes out there. Yeah. And they come in both wet and dry flavors.
Flavors.
Sure.
You don't lube your chain all the time. So how do you decide what your general use lube should be?
Well, one of the biggest things I see is people over lubing their chain too much. And that's when a chain comes in dirty.
Yes.
It is, and I should say like filthy.
Okay. Filthy.
It's
disgusting.
Usually because they over lube their chain, and then it collects a lot of dirt. And then they probably are not cleaning the chain. They're just applying more lube.
I was going to ask, are they over lubing because they're they regularly lubricate the chain? Meaning, and when we say lubricate chain, you're basically putting like a drop on each link.
Yeah.
Right?
On each roller.
And then they're just lubing it again without cleaning it.
Yes. The other thing though is that the lubrication for a chain belongs down in the rollers. It belongs down on those pins, not on the outside of the chain that you can basically see.
Right.
So if your chain is coated in lube, it's going to collect dirt, and that dirt is going to then quickly build up.
That's why after we put on the lube and we spin it a couple times, we then take our rag
and just wipe off
any excess.
Yeah.
Gently, just running through.
Certain lubes, you can actually get just a small drop on each roller, which kind of soaks down into there, and you're not really getting it anywhere else, and so you haven't gotten it all over, say, the side plates and so forth of your chain.
And you should be putting it on the bottom, like you have the chain going through the circle.
It doesn't matter. So by putting it if you have your chain going around the crankset, right? And I usually will apply it on the return back to the derailleur on the bottom. Right? Only because I can spin the crank backwards while applying it. That's the only reason. And because the nozzles of a lot of chain lubes tend to then float over the chain easier down there.
Well, also, wouldn't it, because I saw one video of somebody lubing their chain and they were actually doing it as it ran through the cassette.
So I don't like it doing it on the cassette. And that's because the cassette should not be lubed. And basically you are letting that lube drip down possibly into and on the cassette, which will then collect dirt on the cassette.
Ta-da!
Yeah. The cassette...
I love when you go exactly to where I have led you.
Does not need to be lubed.
Well, and doesn't it also risk contamination of the disc and the brake, because you're putting some kind of liquid on at the same time? Actually, it's awfully close to that.
I'm glad you brought that up. So what I will also see on a lot of bikes is the rear rim coated in chain lubricant. Now, it's not liquid. It's a film. It is a dried up film, and let me tell you, that might be the most impossible thing to get off of a bike. Okay. It does not wash off.
Yes.
You're going to have to probably use steel brushes to get that off.
Fantastic.
And that is because the person is over lubricating. Likely lubricating on top of their cassette, which now has lubricant in it. Then they go out for a ride.
Anything else on cleaning our bikes?
Cleaning
your bike.
Heavy sweaters.
Heavy sweaters?
Yes.
Okay. Sweaters.
Sweaters.
Not sweater.
No.
Yes. Heavy sweater.
Okay. Just real quick on this.
Salty people.
Yes. So there are some people who have what we're going to call toxic sweat. And it is a very high acidity sweat. And usually they're the kind of people who's like the stem bolts at the top, like those are rusted if they're not stainless steel.
Yes.
Like anything on their bike that doesn't happen to be stainless steel or aluminum or whatever, any like steel bolts are rusted. Okay. And they often will, like their brake calipers, like their disc brake calipers, will the paint will be actually peeling off of it, right? Because of this.
Yeah.
So in those cases, and where I'm going to with this is actually their hands. So that sweat can soak through the bar tape where the...
So we're talking
I'm going to talk on a road bike or a gravel bike, okay?
Yes, yep.
It can soak through the bar tape down onto the handlebar. And that sweat then reacts with if they have an aluminum bar, it will react with that aluminum bar. It will also rust out the clamps and the bolts in those shifters too. But that's not generally a problem.
Okay.
It's the corrosion on the handlebars, and which shows up as white powder.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
You can risk snapping your handlebars if you let that keep just going without ever checking it.
Okay.
I have seen this happen.
Yes.
So, and I think every mechanic has seen this.
Yeah.
So
I've seen the videos.
If you're somebody who has the
what did you call it?
Toxic sweat.
Toxic.
Yes.
So it's not that you're necessarily a sweaty person. You could be a sweaty person
and not have this problem
where
you
your
just
pH balance
your pH
for summer
is just extremely low.
Okay.
All right. So very acidic.
Science.
And so if you're somebody whose bike has a lot of little rusty bolts and that kind of thing, then you probably have this more acidic sweat. And so you should think about, and if you're not somebody who changes your bar tape often,
yes,
you should probably think about checking underneath the bar tape at your hoods. Yeah.
And would something like regularly, say, washing the bike help with that?
Yes, because usually you're soaking down in there, right?
And you're getting rid of that salt and that. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Clean your bikes, people. They deserve it. We're going to wrap up with a question from Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about the difference between cross country, down country, trail. Is all mountain the same as trail, or does it sit between trail and enduro? This is back to what are we calling all of these mountain bike types?
This does get a little bit tricky is the wrong word. It just sort of comes down to a lot of marketing in this case.
Marketers.
The names for all of these different types of mountain bikes can be boiled down to both travel and we'll say angles.
Okay.
Right? We'll call it a little bit of the geometry of the bike.
Yes.
Right? So where you move up from, we're going to start at 100 millimeters of travel.
Okay.
All right? Because there are very few full suspension bikes that have less than that. And sort of moving up all the way to the downhill segment where you're in the 200 millimeters of travel range.
So it starts at cross country?
Starts at cross country, then it kind of down country. I think now people are trying to get rid of down country.
Yes, we talked about that.
Yep. Then you have a trail bike, then an all mountain bike, then an enduro bike, and then a downhill bike.
Okay.
Trail and all mountain can get swapped around a little bit. There's some overlap there. There's overlap in travel. In general, a trail bike is going to be a little bit more of a responsive bike. It's going to be a little bit more on that down countryside. and the all mountain bike is going to be a little bit more pushing the enduro side.
Okay.
All right. So an all mountain bike is intended to sort of be that everything bike. It can climb well. It can go downhill very well.
Okay.
But it's not going to climb as well as a trail bike.
Okay.
So trail and all mountain, they kind of flip flop a little bit.
Okay.
All right. Depending on who you're talking to and the company and so forth. So, but you have that sort of definitive edge though between cross country, down country, and enduro.
Yes. We also had a little bit of a follow-up. We talked on the last episode about a woman who was having trouble. She was getting bounced off the back of her bike. We were talking about her tire pressure versus her shock. And as I was preparing for my fundamentals class, I thought we didn't talk about the third thing, which was technique.
Oh,
that
right.
What we didn't talk about is, yes, you need to check your pressure. Yes, your shock should help. She might be sitting too hard in her saddle. She might not recognize that she should be standing up on her pedals, and that can actually help prevent her from getting popped off of her saddle, right? Because she's sitting really hard.
Right. I think, you ride behind some beginners, if you will, and a lot of times they tend to be seated riding through stuff, or generally sometimes coasting through stuff, I should say, where they should be standing up on their pedals.
Yeah.
And so there's no wonder they're feeling like they're getting bucked around on their bike, coasting through a certain very bumpy section because they're sitting down and they should be standing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's correction. It's an addition to last week's show. Cycling Together with Kristen and Steve is a production of Steve the Bike Guy, an independent bicycle shop in Eastern Massachusetts, and Sundin Marketing.
If you like the show, please leave a review and share with a friend. For show notes, links, or to leave a comment, question, or topic suggestion, please visit cyclingtogether.bike. And you can follow Steve the Bike Guy at the shop on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Steve the Bike Guy.
Thank you for joining the ride.
All right. See you next time.
Well, you can tell me if I'm wrong as we go. There seems to be one area of the bike in particular that is going to differentiate my tier 1 from my tier 2 to my tier 3. And it's the derailleur. Derailleur. How do I say that? And it's the derailleur.
There you go.
Okay.